I'm Mary Jo Foston. Welcome to another of our webinars for MidWest Center. This time I bring you Working with Teens for Success. And by success here, I mean not necessarily success in business or the corporate world, but what I'm talking about is more communication and your relationship with them. And what I've tried to do is pool my 20 years of experience in working with families and teenagers, as well as my parenting classes that I've done for many years, as well as some insights from my own personal parenting with my two teens that are now adults, things that as I look back, I wish I had done differently and better. I will also bring you some tips from neuroscience, as well as from a world-renowned child psychiatrist. So I'm hoping this will be very helpful for you. We'll be talking about many different topics today, identifying your teen and different ways of looking at your teenagers. Sometimes it's hard to identify what's going on with them because there's so much going on with them, but also looking at ourselves as parents. What identifies you as a parent in your style and your temperament, the goals that you have for them as well as their goals for themselves. Looking at the neuroscience of it all, the emotional brain and the logical brain, and looking at how to kind of work those two together a little bit. And of course, many tips as we go forward. So we've got a big agenda. Let's go forward, and I'm hoping it's a good webinar for you. First of all, who is your teen? Sometimes we ask ourselves that all the time. What's going on with you? But they're also unique. They're also sometimes very moody, sometimes emoting all over the place, and sometimes very calm. Sometimes they want to talk with us, sometimes they don't want to talk with us. But it's all very important to try to understand where they're at. And if you've got more than one teenager at home, it's very important to realize that they may have some very different qualities, each one of them. You've probably heard of the 4 temperaments, and I've used this before in my other seminars with children. And yet, I think it's very appropriate for teens. And so you're looking at the stronger emotions on top, the melancholic and the choleric, and then what they say weaker emotions, I label as lighter emotions, phlegmatic and sanguine. And then there's unchangeable temperaments. I would rather say rather inflexible temperaments, and then the changeable temperaments. So wherever they tend to fall in this, sometimes they're a combination of them. Sometimes they flip back and forth even in one day, but they tend to go toward one or two of them. And it's very interesting to just kind of identify where each one of them is at in this kind of a way. And then each one has personal qualities, of course, different qualities, unique qualities for themselves as teenagers. And if you've got one that has the ones on the left, the self-motivated, self-disciplined, they're compliant with what you want, boy, count yourself as lucky, count yourself as blessed. However, if there's ones in your household that are non-motivated, non-compliant, and undisciplined, then I'm going to hope to give you some tips about how to work with them. And those are important things to be able to look at. You need to find ways to work with them. That's why I labeled this Working with Teens for Success. And so you got to find what works for them. One of my favorite tips for parents is to find the carrot that works for them. Each one has a different carrot that works for them, believe it or not. And so in finding those carrots, you know, sometimes you try yelling at them, you try screaming at them, you try threatening, you try pleading, you might even try crying, and to no avail. So you might as well stop, because if it's not working, don't do it anymore. And I don't even recommend those as ways to motivate them. because more than likely it won't motivate them in a positive way. So what does motivate them? So for younger teens, what I've found usually motivates them is either taking away their phone or taking away their time with friends, or just the opposite, adding time with friends, adding time with the phone, if you've taken it away especially. So you need to kind of look at that. Then for older teens, what I found is the best way to look at that is a lot of them from 15 on are kind of counting on driving a car. And so they're looking forward to driver's ed, they're looking forward to their permit, their driver's license. And so that car is a big thing for them. And so if you hold off on that until they do what you want them to do, maybe it's you want them to be more respectful in the home, you want them to be more responsible with their homework, you want them to be, doing more of what you want them to do, maybe with school. Hold off, because sometimes that might be your only carrot. And if that's your only carrot, you need to hold off on it, because it's amazing what they will do when they are motivated enough to work for something. I've seen it time and time again as I work with teens and their families. The parents are just about ready to give up. And I say, so, what motivates you? And I ask the teen that. What do you really want right now? And by and large, they will tell you, I want my phone, I want more time with friends, I want a car. So take some cues from what they say, because that's very important, and you can use that in order to motivate them. And then it's very important to kind of assess where they are in their self-esteem. There's certainly things that decrease their self-esteem. There's certainly things that increase their self-esteem. So as you look at kind of assessing where they are from the balance point, that's what this line is in the middle. That's the balance point. And self-esteem is very fragile. It can go up and down very easily. It can go down very easily with criticism, comparing them with other children that you have, comparing them with cousins or other friends that they have. They don't deserve that. They deserve to be acknowledged for who they are and the special person that they are. Cyberbullying has done a number on a lot of teens and preteens, and do what you can to corral their internet use so that that doesn't happen. Take them off of Facebook if you need to. Take them off of Instagram. And they may not like it, but if they don't get bullied anymore, hey, it's worth it. And then there's teens that are definitely depressed. And you may not know that, except for maybe their behavior. And we'll talk about that in a minute. They may not come to you and say, Mom, I'm really depressed, or Dad, I'm really anxious. They might, and then pay attention to it, talk to them about it. They might actually have an eating disorder. Anorexia is very common with teen girls today. Bulimia also can start in the teen years, as well as binge eating and feeling really bad about your self-esteem because you feel like you're too large, too fat. So what I encourage the parents to do is to be willing to do the encouragement piece, to be willing to talk to them about, hey, you did that really well. I'm so glad that you're interested in that. Looks like you're really having fun with that. Their achievements also is something that increase their self-esteem, whether it be in school or out of school. And so your place is to show genuine interest and support and that calm reassurance in them so that they can feel more confident in themselves. And this is what I label the 7 love languages of a teen. You may have heard of the 5 love languages, and they're up in the top. So words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. They're all very interesting to see that oftentimes we kind of tend toward one, and teenagers do the same thing. One that makes us feel more loved than the other. Example for myself was when my son was a teenager, I remember telling him, you know, when you do the dishes for me, it makes me feel loved. And he said, Mom, that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. And I said, oh, but it does make sense to me. It makes me feel good because you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to do that for me. And they feel the same way. So you might need to kind of look at which one they tend to be, because they do tend to be one. What I did find out is my son's is quality time, and my daughter's, I think, is words of affirmation. I'm still kind of looking at that right now. But for sure, they all need the ones at the bottom, safety and security. They need to feel safe in their own home. They need to feel safe when they come home from school, from being with friends. They need to know that the environment that you have for them, whether you're married or divorced or they're adopted or whatever, they need to feel that they are safe and secure in your environment. So whatever you can do to help them feel that way, if there's domestic violence going on, they're not going to feel safe and secure. And above all, they need unconditional love, no matter how they screw up. They need to know that you still love them as a person, even though their behavior is not what you want. So divide, separate their behavior from them as a person. That's very important. And then to look at your own parenting style. Do you tend to be one of these three? Let's go through them real quick. The authoritative parent is one that has kind of a top-down approach. Tend to kind of do a lot of the, do this or do it my way or the highway. And oftentimes that ends up with a lot of rebellion. Oftentimes there's no flexibility with the parents, and they say, do what I say because I say so. And teenagers oftentimes don't respect that, and they might do what you say, but they're going to be full of resentment. Whether they express that or not, they are full of resentment. Believe me, I see it in therapy. And then there's the permissive type of parent who lets them do whatever they want to. And as this girl is expressing in the middle, they don't often kind of want to do what you want them to do. So they're going to just do whatever they want to. And it can get out of hand and pretty rudely, pretty fast. So we don't suggest that you just let them do whatever they want to do. What I suggest is what's called constructive parenting. And you could also rename that as collaborative parenting, cooperative parenting, however you want to talk or label this. It's about talking with them about what you want, what they want. And they might give you that look like this girl on the left is doing, but continue to talk with them about hard subjects and continue to work with them about their concerns in life. And it's all very important to be able to just be there with them and don't talk at them. I was famous for my lectures with my children, 2 to 3 hour lectures. And I would do a lot of the things that I've told you I already don't want you to do, the yelling and the pleading and the whatever. And I thought, somewhere in here, they will get the point. But oftentimes they don't. After the first couple of sentences, they just turn off. So you might as well keep it short and sweet. And I mean that, short and kind. And they will most likely respect that in you. And there might be times when you have to help them to understand things, as this father is doing. And that's fine. But I don't suggest you do homework for them as a teenager. They're they should most of the time be able to do their homework by themselves. It's so easy when they come to you and say, I don't know what to do, for you to do it for them, especially if you know that subject. But be careful of that, because If you do it for them, they won't learn how to problem solve themselves. And then what is your temperament? This is also important in parenting. And it's important to know if you fall in one of these categories, if you tend to be rather inflexible and unchangeable, or if you are a little bit more easygoing in your temperament. So if you look at this and you say, okay, so I guess I tend to be a choleric person, and you've already identified that you have a choleric child who is very excitable and you're emoting all over the place. And if you're emoting all over the place, you got all these emotions running around and it may not work too well. There might be a lot of power clashes. It's probably not going to be a positive system. And then, as I look back on myself, I tended to be more of the, I think, anxious parent, worried parent. I was more serious. So I guess I was melancholic. I never thought of myself as melancholic, but that's how this is labeled. And I tended to be more principled and persistent and steadfast in my beliefs. And I thought, well, then they should be. So then I realized later on in life when I looked at this, that I had a choleric child and a sanguine child. So I was very different than them. And I couldn't quite figure out where this came from. But you know what? We get our temperaments from our birth. And it comes genetically, as well as some of it is kind of rounded out in our environment. But it's very interesting to see how these work together or against each other. But don't worry, even if you see that there's power clashes in your home, I will still want to give you some tips that might help you. So hang in there with me. Look at your goals versus theirs. Your goals for them, and I just labeled ones that I wanted for my teenagers. I want you to be responsible. I want you to be respectful. I want you to be a good student. I want you to, find ways to do good in the world. And of course, I want to give you practical skills to, go out and be independent. So that's when my son was ready to leave home. I said, you can't leave home until you're able to clean the bathroom. And I had to go in and check, and he did a good job. But that's an important piece. What pieces of practical advice do you want to give them? Might be financial, might be how to save, might be how to, budget, whatever. So what are your goals for them? And then what are your teenagers' goals? They might be quite different. You might have to ask them, what are your goals? They might say, I don't know. I don't have any goals. But maybe they do. Do they like school? Ask them if they like school. Yeah, I like school. Do you want to go forward into college? Well, maybe. How are your grades now going to help you with that? This is what I call guiding questions to help them kind of figure out what they want. Are they more fun-loving and social? So maybe they don't like school. Maybe they just want to goof around with their friends, okay? And they don't want to go forward into college, but you want them to, okay? Be willing to talk with them about that and be willing to acknowledge who they are, not necessarily who you want them to be. Are they more creative? And maybe they're going to be on the artsy side of life. Maybe they like playing an instrument, and that's more of what they're going toward. And sometimes if you don't know their goals, you can look at their goals of misbehavior, and you can figure out kind of what their goals might be. So this is interesting as you look at, okay, if they're misbehaving, what are their goals? I never thought that maybe they had goals when they were misbehaving, but they do. You can tell that by how you feel. If they want attention, you feel annoyed. If they want power, you feel angry. If they want revenge, you feel hurt. And if their goal is inadequacy, oftentimes they're ready to give up. And so are you. But that's where you encourage. That's where you tell them, I know you can do it if you give it a try. Just give it a try. Try your best. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. And then their goal might be excitement. So this is the teens that start wanting the alcohol. They want the sex. They want, any kind of risky behavior. And this is scary for parents as they see this. Maybe they want pure acceptance. A lot of them do. Very common. And so they might do anything that the rest of their group is doing, say on Instagram, say on Facebook, because that's what they're doing. Maybe it's superiority. And so if they want superiority, they might feel really good about their high grades. They might start putting other people down because that makes them feel good. What are their goals in this behavior? Be willing to look at that, because that can help you understand them too. You don't have to knuckle under to those. What you can do is work with them a little bit differently. And I'll give you some tips about that. So here I want you to look at not necessarily going with the emotional brain or just with the logical brain, but this is where neuroscience can really help us. So what if you've got, this choleric child and you've got this choleric type of personality yourself? What's happening is you're doing your behavior with your emotional brain, which is the more primitive brain. And the amygdala is here, and it's the part of the brain that has to do with fear and fear conditioning, and oftentimes with anger. And the very center part of the brain is more primitive part. If you're working only with that primitive part, and that's where you're all about emotion, you're thinking with a very primitive brain. And so is your teen if they're in there. So what you need to look at is the right side of the slide. The limbic brain is that part of the brain that deals with emotions, the fight, flight, or freeze, and they're all about emotions, okay? That's the center part. But we all want to be able to think with the front part of our brain, and that's the logical part. That's where the higher reasoning is, the higher functioning. It's more evolved. That's what you want them to work with. You also want to work with that yourself. And the best way to do that is to calm yourself down. Now, you may not be able to calm them down when they're emoting all over the place, but your job as a parent is to work on you more than them, okay? And to be able to work on your emotions so that you are in control as the adult. Let's see how you can do that. I want you to be able to catch yourself escalating in anxiety, in fear, in anger. And I want you to be able to tell yourself, stop, calm down, slow down, breathe. Those 4 things are very important to tell yourself over and over and over again. But you have to catch yourself as you're escalating, because you don't want to wait till you're at the peak, because it feels harder and harder to control your emotions as you're up at the peak. Catch yourself as you're escalating, as your body is starting to get full of adrenaline, as your heart is beating real fast. Tell yourself, stop, I'm not going to yell, I'm not going to scream. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to breathe. Stop, calm down, slow down, breathe. And you can do this even in the middle of an argument. I remember doing this with one of my children. They were emoting all over the place, something they wanted to do, and I had decided ahead of time, I'm not gonna scream anymore. I don't like being that kind of parent. And so I decided I was going to start working on myself. And so I learned how to do this in the middle of an argument. You can do this too. It's very helpful to be able to do this so you can feel in control of your own emotions. And that slide that flipped in there, remember that their anger can manipulate you. And sometimes that's what they're trying to do. If they're trying to manipulate you, you don't have to be manipulated. You can just be matter of fact. You don't have to emote. You don't have to react to their anger. It takes a lot of self-control, but that's what we are called to do as a parent, to be in self-control. Also know that your own anger can destroy a relationship. And I've been a witness to that with both of my children. My own anger was destroying the relationship I had with them. And I needed to look at myself and say, stop doing that, Mary Jo. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, you can do it differently, Mary Jo. You can learn to be in control. And you know what? Now that I'm more in control of my own emotions, I feel better, and we do have a better relationship. So you need to get out of your emotions and into what we call wise mind. So you're not just the rational mind. You're not just the emotional mind. You're trying to meld the two of them together. I'm not saying you're not going to have the emotions. You might still be angry. You might still be resentful that this is happening in your family. And you can think very logically when you're not in the heat of it, of what to say. But if in the midst of an argument, you are willing to calm yourself down, you can be working on that wise mind, that rational mind that's going to think more rationally about how to work with them a little bit differently. And so in working with them through problems that you're having, you're going to want them to be able to navigate their own problems in life, just as this maze is showing. So you want to give them, even from a young age, choices and options, and to have them make decisions whenever possible. Give them choices like, okay, what do you want to wear today when they're young? Another one, when they're older, when would you like to mow the lawn? And in your mind, you're saying, well, I've been asking them for how long now to mow the lawn, and they're not mowing the lawn, they're just on their phone. So you talk to them about, okay, would you like to mow the lawn today or Saturday? As giving them choices and options. And if they say, well, I don't want to mow it either time, say, well, that's the option I'm giving you. Otherwise, the consequence will be, and you've already talked to them about consequences, by the way, for not doing what you want. And so the consequence then that we've already set up is that, you won't be spending as much time with your friends coming up this weekend. And they're going to hem and haw and yell and scream and whatever. But you can remain matter of fact and continue to talk about this was your choice, your option. This was your consequence there. It's not necessarily me doing this to you. It's your choice. You can choose, but then there's consequences. Okay. So you might need to make contracts with them, and contracts sometimes are very, very helpful. You sit down and you talk about, let's divide up the chores, equally. I remember trying to do that. And, I felt bad because I was doing so many of the chores. And so we set up a contract for the kids and the adults when they were going to do things and the consequences. So they knew the consequences ahead of time. And that was helpful for a long time, but it needed to be written down because, they're such good debaters that they would oftentimes, and they oftentimes do this with many parents, they kind of talk their way out of things. Well, you didn't say that. I don't remember you said that. So writing it down helps a lot, whether it's on a whiteboard or a piece of paper or a computer sheet or whatever you want to do, but it helps. And so you work with natural consequences or logical consequences. Natural consequences are ones that just happen. You don't have to make them happen. And school, hopefully, is giving some natural consequences if they say don't get to school on time, they don't get to class on time, if they don't get their work in on time, if they, if they just don't do what they're supposed to do. But I understand some schools are getting pretty lax in that, which causes me a lot of concern because there needs to be some natural consequences for them for school. Logical consequences, these are the consequences I was talking about before. You've already set them up to talk about consequences with them. So the logical consequences are the ones that, okay, if you don't come in at curfew, then I guess you'll be going to bed earlier tomorrow night. And if you don't respect us, then I guess there won't be driver's ed coming up, or we won't take you to the soccer game. If you don't do chores for us, then maybe you don't need to have a job right now because maybe you need to learn responsibility here at home. And I want you to know your own boundary problems because that can set up all kinds of problems with allowing consequences to happen. And so if you tend to be a compliant parent, like I had been, you don't want to say no to them. You don't want to come off as being mean or insensitive. You don't want to hurt them and you don't want to be hurt by their anger. And so you tend to have a hard time saying no to them when you really don't think they should be doing so. And the other type of parent is a controller. And I count myself as a recovering controller right now because I tended to be a controller at times. Manipulative controllers can kind of manipulate with emotions. And so that might be, I guess you really don't care about us anymore because you're not going to help us around the house. An aggressive controller has more threats. Do this or else. A non-responsive parent would be someone who ignores their children. And this happens more often than you would think. So these are not healthy ways to go forward with your own boundaries. To be able to know that you can have boundaries, setting limits is important for them as well as for you. And it does help to establish respect in the home. But avoid power struggles at all costs because nobody wins in a power struggle. And I never suggest that you do this type of parenting because it will always be destructive. For communication, I encourage respectful assertiveness. And this is my term. I don't know why anybody hasn't come up with it before, but basically it's using a lot of I statements. So it might be, I'm concerned about your grades. Not, you're never going to graduate with these grades. I really appreciate it when you do the dishes. Not, you never help me in the house. I've noticed that you spend a lot of time on the phone. Not, you're really obsessed with that phone. And, you can get really snarky with the comebacks that you have. Let go of the snarkiness. It just doesn't help your relationship, okay? Even if they're snarky with you. It takes the self-control again. I'm wondering if we could talk about dividing chores. I really appreciate it if, you would mow the lawn one time a week. It would help us out so much. Let's cooperate. Let's talk about how to work this out together. How about if we go out and rake the leaves together? You do one side of the yard, I'll do the other side. We'll meet in the middle and we'll get a pizza at the end. That's cooperating. That's asking for cooperation. That really does make a difference. And what I found is that my time was not always the same as their time. I swear they were on a different clock than I was because I wanted things done. I could see things that needed to be done, but they just didn't necessarily want to do them when I wanted them done or when I needed them to be done. So I needed to be able to flex and they needed to be able to flex. So what if you were, what if you came home a little bit earlier and you mowed the lawn on Saturday and then you went out? What if you cleaned up your room before you went out, and they're saying, no, I don't want to do it. Try to work with them. Okay, how about doing it Sunday? Try to work with them. Working with usually works better. That way, they respect you a little bit more, and you're working on respecting them. It's very important to have both sides respect each other. You can't make them respect you, but using respectful assertiveness helps them to feel like you are trying to respect them more. And it can create a lot more back and forth positivity in your relationship. So let go of the you statements, let go of blaming them and shaming them, and try to work with them. Here's some general tips from that child psychiatrist. Rudolf Dreikers was Austrian trained, but he worked in Chicago. And his most important encouragement for us as parents was to use encouragement for them. Nobody gets enough encouragement. Everybody needs encouragement. So sometimes you have to find the positive. Sometimes when they're acting so disrespectfully, it's really hard to find anything to encourage. It's hard to find any positive about them. But that's when you need to search harder. What is it in their personality that is positive? If you can't find a behavior that's positive, find something in there, find something to be positive and encourage. I really love it when you think about your younger brother and sister. I really appreciate it when you help us around the house. I really love the fact that you smile so much. It just brightens up the house. Find something, okay? Look at the goals of misbehavior, and we've covered some of these already. Being kind, but firm. I didn't know the two of them went together, but you know, you can be firm and matter of fact, and you can still be kind. You don't have to get all emotive. You don't have to scream. You can do it kindly. And it's important to show respect as well as get respect. Following through with what you said that you're going to do for consequences so that they know that you do mean what you said. And don't say that there will be a consequence if you're not willing to follow through with it. Very important, okay? Stop any criticism. Stop any criticism, especially when they're misbehaving, because you're not going to get what you want. You're just not. And you're only going to dig them deeper into their low self-esteem, and you're going to dig your relationship into a bad place. Work with your child, work with your teen, ask for cooperation, ask them to work with you. Don't overprotect. Oh, it's so easy to try to overprotect them and give them too much these days, because some of us can afford to give them more. And we want to give them more because we love them. But if you overprotect and overgive, you're going to produce overindulgence. And you don't want to do that. Don't do more for them than they can do for themselves. And watch how you come across to them in what your eyes say to them, your tone of voice, and your facial expressions. Have a softer look on your face rather than a harsh, mean look. Okay? So many things that we can do as parents. Above all, don't take things so personally. When they come at you and say mean, terrible things at you, just realize that those are just words. They are just words. And yes, they can hurt. But if you change the way you do things, it's very possible that they will change and be more respectful and more kind to you. I've seen it over and over and over with parents. Be careful, though, of succumbing to your own depression and anxiety. Work on kind of, doing your own life as well as having teenagers in your house. Very important. So we've talked about a lot of things today, and I'm hoping these things can give you the confidence to have success with your teen. And I'm hoping that these tips will help you to go forward with them. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I've really appreciated the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you again.